we always encourage starting with the basics and setting a strong foundation to utilizing a CLM before taking steps into diving deeper into data insights or innovating in larger jumps like AI or legal playbooks or something like that. Hi, my name is Emily Danek, and I'm Ntracts VP of Strategic Projects. Through my last 5 years at Ntracts, I've been able to sit and work in many different positions and departments at Ntracts, and that's really given me a unique perspective and insights into our clients and our contract management system. It's helped me understand how clients utilize our system, how we can educate our clients to use the system in different ways, and how we can support them through their partnership with Ntracts. So what I would like to do today is talk through how maintaining that strong foundation and establishing that from the start is core to your CLM success and to maintaining compliance for your healthcare organization. The basics that I would like to cover today are going through key required data points for your CLM, the ease and use of our automatic notifications to be alerted of upcoming expiration dates or other key critical dates within the system, receiving notices on those through our tasks functionality, talking through the relationship between our contract record to vendors and files, and lastly, that 3-tiered security model to make sure that the appropriate people have access to view and or edit the agreements and that they're not widely available for the entire organization. Here is our landing page, and one thing that's really special about the Ntracts landing page is that it gives you some insights into your data. So it starts with showing a breakdown of the contracts that you would be considered the contract owner for, so you would be responsible for these agreements. It toggles between the My Contracts and the All Contracts on all of our widgets, and what that shows is, like I said, My Contracts are ones where I'm listed as the contract owner, and All Contracts are all the contracts in the system that I have access to. Now, there may be thousands of more contracts within my hospital's database, but these are the core ones that I have permissions to through that 3-tiered security model. So I want to start with those basics of required fields. Different systems have different required fields, and some are missing this. They miss the requirement on data points. And this is really key and important to maintaining a compliant solution to ensure that all the necessary data points are being tracked and that the agreement is active and fully executed before paying the vendor or the provider, or understanding the terms of the agreement before the renewal, getting notified of the upcoming expiration date to ensure that you can opt out if you don't want to continue that relationship. So what I've done is I've jumped into one of our contract records, and this is what I like to call the core of the system. So a contract record is where I can link my internal and external parties, as well as the file records that apply to this agreement. Like I said, I wanted to start just talking through those basic key required fields in our system and how that can support your system usage of a CLM system and understanding those basics. So starting on the left, we can identify what parties are associated with this contract. They'll all be tagged as either internal or external or other, so that we can easily see what internal organizations are part of this contractual agreement. You can add more than one. And then who's my vendor? Who's that outside party? Is it a company? Is it an individual? Or is it a provider or a physician group? If I come into edit mode, we can kind of talk through those required fields. So starting at the top, we have the 2 requirements related to our internal contracting entities and then those external parties. And the next is on contract status. What we've seen in the past is some systems and some organizations like to utilize a long list of statuses to track contracts in different phases. We've taken the time to really drill down and identify 4 key statuses that get updated either manually or automatically, depending on which stage a contract is in and what is going to happen with that agreement. Our first status to talk through is called incomplete. So that's when I may not be using workflow, I may just be using contract management, or I may have an agreement that was signed outside of the system that I need to bring in and I don't have all the information to it. So I can put it in an incomplete status to flag myself like this contract is missing some data I need to review. And then once I receive that data, I can come in and I can change it to active. Once a contract is in an active status, there are a set of required fields to maintain compliance, which we'll go over in just a minute. The next status is expired. If I have an active contract that has an expiration date and no auto renewal, either evergreen or limited, once that expiration date comes around, if I haven't already taken action on it, it will move the contract into an expired status automatically so that I can quickly come to my contract list, either my contract grid through reporting or through that first landing page, and see what contracts are in that expired status and act on them. The last status is closed. So this is anything where a contract has been terminated, it's lived its term, but there is no renewal, or it's been archived. Those can all be tracked in that closed status and also reported on. The next required field that we have is called contract fully executed. And I find that this is a unique field to Ntracts where we can quickly toggle between yes and no if I have that fully executed agreement within my CLM. This is a key data point to make sure that this contract is in compliance. It's known if it's fully signed and if it's not fully signed, and this is used a lot of the times with finance to make sure that we have that fully signed agreement before we pay on any providers or vendors. And if we don't have that fully signed agreement, then we can reach out to the appropriate parties to make sure that we locate it and bring it into the system. I'd say that conceptual thought, making sure we have that contract fully executed and housed in the system, is a really good piece to maintaining that single source of truth and guiding and pointing people back to Ntracts to come here to find that fully executed agreement. The next 2 data points that I want to call out are primary contract type and department. And I find these 2 data points to be unique to healthcare specific CLMs. I would say agnostic CLMs don't have the specificity, or it doesn't play the same role that it might at Ntracts. So these allow us to tag contracts down to the type of contract that it is, as well as the department that it belongs to. And these help us to build out our roles around permissions and who can access this agreement. I've seen in the past where agnostic CLMs are built around one tier in their security structure, maybe just primary contract type, and they don't use department or the internal entity to help drive permissions. And so this allows us to create roles specific to a healthcare system and to a person's role or function at the organization. Our next 2 required data points are the dates of the agreement. So what is the effective date and what is the initial expiration date? These are required, and they always should be required to ensure that there's proper monitoring and tracking of all contractual obligations within your system. Again, I find that this data point isn't required across all CLMs, particularly, again, across those agnostic ones. They might be using AI to pull this data in, so instead of it being a date picker, it might be a text field, or just might not hold that same weight of that expiration date. This is a really important data point to us to make sure that our business owners, our contract owners, are being notified of contracts coming up for expiration in a timely manner and in a manner where they can take action on that agreement. We do this through automatic notifications. So once a day, a summary email will go out to contract owners of all of their contracts coming up for expiration, for auto renewal, and a couple other trackers, so that they can begin acting on it in a timely manner, like I mentioned. Once a contract either comes for expiration and it doesn't auto renew, it will stay 5/31/2025, and that status will flip from active to expired. But let's say it did have auto renewing provisions, the year would tick forward whatever that term length of that renewal is. So for example, if it was a 12-month renewal, it would jump to 2026. I'm going to scroll down to our terms and conditions, where we track another few key required fields. So we want to be tracking those auto renewing provisions so that systems are aware of what are my auto renewing contracts, what are my limited ones, do I have auto renewing contracts where I have multiple vendors providing the same function or service, so that I can terminate one or more of those and identify cost savings within my organization. We have the option to track if they are or aren't auto renewing, and then if yes, they do auto renew, we can track if they're at an evergreen or a limited cadence and what that month cadence is. Excuse me. The last set of required fields that I want to talk through, and of course you see lots of other data points that can be tracked and filled in. They aren't required, they're just additional data to drive further insights. The last data point I want to talk through is contract owner. And again, this was surprising in doing some research, how this required field isn't across all contract lifecycle management systems. Again, the industry agnostic ones don't highlight this or emphasize this as much, or even have this type of field. But what this does is each contract has to have a contract owner, and that is the person who is responsible for the obligation and will receive those automatic notifications to be able to take action on the agreement. I've seen in some other systems where, one, this isn't even a data point tracked, and two, those notifications aren't automatic. They're set off of schedules that I would have to create a view and set that schedule to begin receiving it. So it's interesting to think through how contracts could fall into a gap where they aren't being tracked and they aren't being notified. And as a contract comes for expiration, it's not being included in anyone's list in some of those industry agnostic systems, where it's on the user to create that report that captures it. And within Ntracts, each person has to be identified, and they will receive those notices. So we can use that as an audit trail to make sure, hey, if a contract did renew that we were intending not to, how did it slip through the crack? Or we can look at, hey, this one employee manages hundreds of contracts, whereas someone else manages a smaller subset. Can we evenly distribute the work between clients and the workers there? And so we really see these key required fields as really essential to maintaining compliance within your organization and just tracking the basics. And really, once an organization becomes very good at making sure all those data points are in there, you saw as I scrolled through, there are lots of other data points that can be tracked and used to drive insights into your organization, how you operate, where there may be bottlenecks, and then start to think through how can we be more innovative in our contracting process, and how can we do that with Ntracts supporting us. I briefly touched on it, but we do have the automatic notifications. So users receive these in two ways. They either receive them through an email, once a day summary, or through in-app notifications. You'll see this kind of has a similar feel to an email inbox, where I can check all things, I can mark as read, I can delete as I go if I really want to keep it clean. And I can also filter down to specific types of notifications to really drill down into what I need to be reviewing. It's a really nice and easy way to see my work. I can then come in, click on this, and view that contract record and make any changes that are necessary. thing I wanted to speak to is that contract relationship. Within Ntracts, we have really created a unique system where we have our contract record, our file record, and our vendor external party record. And those three elements can be connected to each other or associated to each other. And it allows us to be able to see the full picture for either a contract, a vendor, or files. Looking at a contract, I can track all the parties and all the files that are associated to it. If I come to a vendor record, I can see what other contracts do I have with this vendor? What are the terms of it? What other services are being provided, and be able to do some consolidation or cleanup if needed. This can happen a lot when hospitals move from a decentralized to centralized contracting process. Each hospital may have had a contract with Software Data Inc. doing the same services, and we actually have an opportunity to consolidate those across one contract record. Additionally, the file record, one thing that I find very valuable is the ability to associate one file across multiple contract records or party records. You see this a lot with maybe BAAs with the company. Instead of having to upload that into each individual file record, contract record, I can upload it that one time and associate it to multiple contract records. You see this a lot with FMVs as well. If they apply to a large subset, I can upload that file once and create those relationships. And it makes it really easy when that agreement comes up for expiration. Instead of having to re-upload the same agreement 20 times, I can upload it that one time and make those associations. The last item that I wanted to speak to is that three-tiered security model. At Ntracts, we really understand the importance for permissions around contracts, or making sure that not everyone has access to everything. Clients will come in and they'll be hesitant to store their clinician contracts in the same system that they have their services agreements. But with Ntracts, with those three tiers in our user roles, we are able to really provide unique and specific access to make sure that no one is seeing information that they shouldn't be seeing through those three data tags. So our model is built around access to an internal entity, primary contract type, and departments. So depending on what combination those are used on a contract record determines what access can be given or what roles have permission to it. This was another area that was interesting in reviewing against other CLM systems, and again, primarily agnostic, is that they often have only one level to their security model, and it's primary contract type. So you set users that have access to all MSAs. Well, we know that that's really not feasible within healthcare. You need to be able to be more secure and provide more unique settings or access to contracts. And it would become really unmanageable in that single tier, because you'd have to be creating, like multiple MSAs or who knows what really, so that restraints are given around Jane Doe can only see services agreement, John Doe can see services agreement and clinician agreements. So really interesting things to think through as you are working on this. Thank you for spending your time with me today, reviewing a few basics of a contract lifecycle management solution and how they can help support your organization to maintain compliance and to maintain security around your contractual agreements. Thank you for spending your time with me, and I hope you have a great day.